Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the All-CAW Wrestling podcast type thing. Thank you very much for watching the first two, for everyone that's watched it and taken the time to leave a like and some comments. For this particular episode, what we like to do is do 5 things. You know, like WWE like to do that thing on their YouTube channel, you know, here's 5 things. And those 5 things are going to be predictions for 2015. So it's going to be 5 things that we predict will happen in WWE or indeed across the world of professional wrestling there. This is what I predict will happen in 2015. Number 1, Brock Lesnar will return to UFC after WrestleMania. I do think that after he's done with WrestleMania, Brock is going to be done with WWE. Dana White is flashing more cash at him to jump back to UFC, and I do think that's what Brock will be doing. In fact, when Brock came out for that final Raw of 2014, he was already looking more sort of trimmed down than what he was in previous months, as if he's already putting his body through all the necessary preparations to go back to UFC. So with that in mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, what sense would it make for WWE to have Brock Lesnar still with the belt going into WrestleMania if he's going to be leaving anyway? Which sort of brings me on to my sort of second prediction. Now, I predict before the end of 2015 that the following men would have become WWE champion. The following men that I predict will become WWE champion in 2015 include Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Dolph Ziggler.
Daniel Bryan.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. And I also predict that Daniel Bryan will be WWE champ again at some point this year. This time with a decent reign as champion. Now, with regards to Seth Rollins, I do think it's interesting that he has recently been added to the Royal Rumble match between John Cena and Brock Lesnar. I think it's definitely a good thing. It means that we don't get to see Cena versus Lesnar for like the 4th time. Adding Seth Rollins into the mix sort of makes it more interesting. Rollins on camera has got some sort of partnership going on with Paul Heyman, or is he gonna, you know, has he still got that thing going on even though he's now back with the Authority? What I would like to see, personally, I mean, because Brock Lesnar's not going to want to do all the promotional stuff lead up to WrestleMania. He's not going to want to do all the press conferences. He's not want to do the interviews, promotions, etc. So what I predict will happen, and what I would like to see happen, John Cena finally beats Brock Lesnar to get his belt back and to match Ric Flair's championship record. That's something else that I predict will happen this year, that Cena will not only match Flair's 16-time world champion record, but at some point in the year he will actually surpass it. So I predict Royal Rumble is where it will happen. John Cena will beat Brock Lesnar for the title, only for Rollins to then cash in Money in the Bank to get the belt himself. From there, Daniel Bryan would win the Royal Rumble, which would lead on to Seth Rollins versus Daniel Bryan as the main event at WrestleMania, and I think they would absolutely tear the house down. You know, I think it makes sense for Bryan to continue the feud with the Authority now that they're back in power, and Rollins, after all, is the crown jewel of the Authority, especially if he has the belts. Now, I know that there's been talk about, you know, Roman Reigns seems to be the favourite to win the Royal Rumble and to go on to face Brock Lesnar for the title at WrestleMania. But there's a couple of problems I have with that. Number one, I don't think Roman Reigns is quite ready yet to be headlining WrestleMania. And if WWE's being honest, they'll probably say the same thing. I think Daniel Bryan coming back to action could very well end up putting a spanner in those original plans they had. I don't think Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar would be in a particularly exciting WrestleMania main event. You could still do Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania if you want, just not for the belts. Just have it where, you know, Lesnar puts over Roman Reigns strong on his way out. So yeah, I don't think Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar is a particularly exciting WrestleMania main event. Have Seth Rollins versus Daniel Bryan, I say. That would be a really exciting WrestleMania match. That's what I predict would happen anyway. I mean, surely there has to be a good reason why they've put Seth Rollins into this Brock Lesnar versus John Cena match at Royal Rumble. So yeah, that's a couple of predictions right there. Brock Lesnar will return to UFC after WrestleMania. Cena will not only match Flair's 16-time world champ record, but actually surpass it. And that at some point, Rollins, Reigns, Ambrose, and Ziggler will all become WWE champ before the end of the year, and Daniel Bryan will be WWE champ. That's 3 predictions already. My next prediction will be that NXT will become the dominant brand in WWE, if it hasn't already. I can actually see it happening where, rather than going from NXT to Raw or SmackDown, being seen as a big promotion, I actually see it as being a bigger thing that guys from Raw and SmackDown actually go over to NXT. You know, actually jumping from the main roster to go to NXT for a career boost. Because I do see a lot of good things happening. Like, say if someone who's been floundering in their career, like a guy like Curtis Axel or a guy like Titus O'Neil, you know, they sort of move from Raw and SmackDown to NXT and get a career boost. And surely that must be a better thing than seeing someone like Bo Dallas, Adam Rose, or perhaps even Adrian Neville being promoted from NXT over to the main roster with a bad gimmick. So I expect to see NXT to be a more dominant brand in WWE, perhaps the most dominant brand in WWE.
Looking at you, Mr. Believing yourself.
That's right. My final prediction isn't actually based around WWE. It's based around other wrestling promotions. I feel that wrestling promotions based in Japan, such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, I feel that promotions based in Mexico, such as AAA, Lucha Underground, and other wrestling promotions across Europe will gain themselves a large portion of an American wrestling audience, thanks mainly to Global Force Wrestling. I predict that Global Force Wrestling won't put on their own shows as much, but what they'll actually do is actually help to promote other wrestling promotions from across the world in America. You know, those who are looking to sort of gain a big foothold in the American market. Because let's face it, the American market is one of the biggest wrestling audiences in the world. What Global Force Wrestling did with New Japan Pro Wrestling and their Wrestle Kingdom 9, as in they sort of offered the show to a Western audience with Western commentary, you know, having Jim Ross and Matt Striker as the commentating team, who were absolutely fantastic, by the way. I see Global Force Wrestling doing a lot more of that with a number of promotions across the world, from Japan, from Mexico. I believe they've also got partnership with some in South Africa as well, and across Europe. And I can seriously see that Global Force Wrestling, as a result of its partnership with all these different wrestling promotions all over the world, they will soon become like the closest thing that WWE has to competition. I can seriously see WWE losing a lot of their audience to a more sort of international wrestling organisation. As for TNA, wouldn't even consider to be number 2. I see TNA pretty much fading further and further away into obscurity. So, those are my 5 predictions. Lesnar will return to UFC. Rollins, Reigns, Ambrose, Ziggler and Bryan will all be WWE champ. Cena will become WWE champ again, not only matching Flair's 16-time record, but actually surpassing it at some point in the year. NXT to become the dominant brand, with superstars actually going over to NXT for a career boost from the main roster. And for wrestling promotions from Japan, Mexico and across Europe, getting a huge American audience thanks to Global Force Wrestling. Those are my predictions for 2015.